Brian David Gilbert, a man on the internet who is pretty funny, and used to work for Polygon on a series called Unraveled, in which he unravels some pretty dumb funny things in video games. He read all the books in Skyrim. He did the Kingdom Hearts timeline. He saw what Pokemon were most edible. He even read the Sonic Bible. But, of course, the series started with something near and dear to my heart. The Zelda timeline, in which he made, in 15 minutes, a Zelda timeline including the non-canonical material. Except, there's one fundamental flaw. Yeah, I'm keeping that in. So, in Brian David Gilbert's Zelda timeline, the fundamental flaw isn't the inclusion of all the non-canonical games like Zelda Chess, Monopoly, Hyrule Warriors, Triforce
Heroes is actually canon.
What?
It's in the timeline, it happens after Link Between
That
Worlds.
one's canon. You're kidding, right? Link dresses up as a cheerleader. He dresses up in Zelda's clothes. That one's canon. Okay. So maybe it's not so far-fetched for these non-canonical things to be included in the timeline when we have Triforce Heroes. But I mentioned a fundamental flaw earlier, and that is that Brian David Gilbert says that the adult timeline is one in which Link stays as an adult and then just sorta disappears. That is fundamentally incorrect, because anyone who's played the game should know the adult timeline occurs because Link defeated Ganon and then was sent back to the past, and the only reason there's a child timeline is because Link stopped Ganondorf early. So, the adult timeline, Link doesn't just stay there and disappear. It is because he disappeared that timeline exists. So, when he says that in this timeline, Link is having an existential crisis going here, there, and everywhere, it's fundamentally wrong. So anything that happens on that side of BDG's timeline, fundamentally incorrect. Well, except the canon stuff, but any non-canon things on that side of the timeline, maybe even including the legendary time break. Anyway, any of that, you can't trust a word of it. But I am going to fix it. So, how exactly am I going to prove that I know the timeline better by saying that these games that BDG put on that side of the timeline can't be over there? Things like Zelda Chess, which he did correctly put at the same time as Ocarina of Time, because the chess pieces are modelled after Ocarina of Time models, but things like Soul Calibur, Mario Kart, they can't be there because Link isn't there. So, where do I put those? So, the easiest thing to do would just be to throw that all away and put it in the legendary time break. Because if it goes in the time break, it doesn't matter except for the chronology of this timeline. But for the most part, it's off to the side, it barely is connected, but the connection it does have is important. That's what the time break is. But I could just throw those things into the time break. Problem solved, right? Absolutely not. The idea of the time break is that everything Everything there is happening at once. It is the part of time where time is a jumbled, wibbly-wobbly mess. And that doesn't fit for the refined nature of Zelda Clue, or, well, I guess the other Soul Calibur maybe, because that has cameos from other games. Not the point. The point is that I need to find a placement for these things. And so, where in BDG's rest of the timeline can it go? Okay, so the simple fact of the matter is, the only reason these can't happen is because there isn't a Link there to have an existential crisis and fight people for sport. So, all we gotta do is put it somewhere in the timeline where there is a Link who can have an existential crisis and fight people for sport. And all those places in the timeline are the rest of the timeline. There's links in all these games. Okay, simple enough. Which one of these links would, after defeating Ganon, have an existential crisis? Okay, let's break it down timeline by timeline. First, we have the child timeline. So, after Link defeats Ganondorf by snitching on him before he ever got to hatch an evil plan, he went into Termina to find Navi. Well, he went into the Lost Woods to find Navi, but then a bunch of stuff happened. He ended up in Termina, he saved Termina, and left back for Hyrule. A big war happened, he eventually probably joined an army, didn't have kids as far as we know, because this guy, this skeleton boy here, that's Link. He has an existential crisis of the fact that he never had any kids to teach his swordsmanship to. And if he wasn't able to teach his swordsmanship to anyone, that probably means that he wasn't fighting people for sport. Because people would have learned from him in doing so. So that rules that one out in terms of, you know, Soul Calibur. And only Soul Calibur. But it doesn't just rule out Soul Calibur, it kinda rules out the other ones. Link, if he went go-karting, would be wearing this armor. And he's not wearing this armor, he's wearing his classic green tunic. So it can't be there. Probably. Now, Four Swords Adventures and Zelda's Adventure, I don't know a whole lot about. But I do know that in Four Swords Adventure, Link did defeat Ganon and seal him away in the Four Sword. I'm pretty sure that's that one and not the other Four Swords. My point is that this Link is a Toon Link, which doesn't match his Mario Kart appearance. However, it also doesn't match his Soul Calibur appearance. His Soul Calibur appearance is Ocarina of Time Link. And if it can't happen in the child timeline, then it has to happen in the basketball timeline. You know, that timeline that exists if Link dies during the Ganondorf fight, or if you happen to go outside with your friend and play basketball instead of finishing the game. Or, in my case, I actually lost my copy of the game and didn't buy a new one for like 7 years. This is the lost copy of the game timeline. You see, it is my personal belief that because it was a lost copy of the game, not just going outside to play basketball and coming back to the game later, rather than just leaving the game temporarily, but leaving it permanently, leaving that Link trapped in an infinite limbo for the rest of his life, never able to escape. He did escape. You think Link would just lay down and die because some kid didn't know what to do with him? No, no, no. Link escaped into Soul Calibur, and that is where that game takes place, in the Lost Game timeline. Now, as for Mario Kart, well, that's simple. Really, really it is. I mean, it's... Where does Mario Kart take place? Think, Eric, think. It's Mario Kart. It's Mario, and Zelda's crossed over with Mario a couple of times, but the most glaringly obvious one is Link's Awakening. In Link's Awakening, in Link's dream, there are a bunch of Mario enemies. Meaning that while Link was dreaming, Link's Awakening, in that dream, he probably also went Mario Kart, except it's a different character model again. You know what? BDG didn't care about the character models. Why should I? This happens here, and I know that invalidates my arguments for other timelines being based on character models. But Mario Kart happens in Link's Awakening, and Soul Calibur happens before that in the Lost Game timeline, which is an alternate version of the basketball timeline, which is BDG's name for the Defeat timeline. And that's it. Those were like the only games that... Clue. Zelda Clue. A refined murder mystery series where would Link participate in a murder mystery? There's gotta be something. There has to be. It's simple. Really, it is. I mean, I'm literally just moving 3 games that BDG incorrectly placed. How hard could it be? We just have to find somewhere that Link would take part in a murder mystery. Okay, so Zelda Clue is based on Ocarina of Time. So I could just do what BDG did for Zelda Chess and say that it happened at the same time. Or maybe Zelda Clue takes place after Zelda Chess, because if it takes place after, then Chess is where the murder happened, because in Chess you're fighting a war, and Zelda Clue is the murder mystery based around that war, trying to figure out what piece took what piece. It's simple. Except the board of Zelda Clue is a completely different map of Hyrule than Ocarina of Time. I mean, sure, it's basically the same locations, but they're just laid out so differently. It's like Kokiri Forest and the Sacred Meadows take up so much space that it pushes everything clockwise. Or counterclockwise. I really need to learn my directions. But the point is, why is Hyrule so tiny? Where's Lon Lon Ranch? Why is it just the castle in the middle and then everything surrounding it? It looks more like Link to the Past. But not laid out correctly. It's as small as Link to the Past, with a few distinct areas surrounding the castle in the center, but where does it go? Maybe maybe it takes place somewhere between Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past, because the map change would make sense then, and the playable characters are Link, Naboru, Impa, Darunia, Zelda, and Rauru. And Link wouldn't exist in the defeat timeline because he'd be dead. Unless that's the murder. Because Link died, that leads to Link to the Past. It all fits. All I had to do to fix the BDG's timeline was take the existential crisis over here and put it over here. That's the entire solution. That's it. I mean, except Mario Kart, but no one cares. I did it. I did an Unraveled video. Something feels wrong, though. Like, this is disingenuous, like I didn't script the video, or I didn't put enough effort in. Like I'm just using a green screen in the middle of my room instead of a pin-up board, or I guess he pinned paper to his walls, the studio walls. I don't have multiple camera angles like he does, so I've just been filling this thing with jump cuts. I'm not as good as him. I'm never going to be as good as him. Hell, this video has no place on my channel. Sure, I do comedy occasionally, but it's mostly just gameplay videos. I mean, what was the point in this? Why? Just because I wanted to make an homage to a creator way better than me? No one's even going to watch this. I mean, a few of my subscribers maybe, but no one knew. No one's going to find my video when they're searching for BDG'S Unraveled, or BDG in general on his own channel. And no one's certainly looking for parodies of BDG. That's silly. Something's wrong. I did it. I should feel accomplished, but instead I'm having an existential crisis. That's it. I figured out where the real world is in the Zelda timeline. It all makes sense. Creators of the Zelda games have multiple times said that the planet that Hyrule is on is just Earth. And because it's just Earth, that means this Earth could be in the Zelda timeline. I'm an iteration of Link. BDG's an iteration of Link. Everyone is just an iteration of Link going through their crisis after they finally did something successful for once. And where else would it possibly make sense for everyone in the world to be an iteration of the legendary hero? In the time break, right at the end. That's it. That's the video.